Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live event, which is part of our Tech Founders series. During this series, we'll be exploring the career stories behind the founders of some of the world's most exciting technology companies. My name's Harry Gooding. I work here at Hayes, and today we are extremely excited to be joined by Chris Nutman, the founder and the CEO of Global Teacher. Global Teacher is a startup charity and social enterprise that's on a mission to educate 1 million hard-to-reach children in offline and off-grid areas of the world. As you can imagine, Chris has an amazing story to share with us, and he's here today to share his story and his unique view as a tech founder on an incredible mission. As always, we're streaming live to LinkedIn. If you have any questions for Chris regarding his story or work or career or things that come up in the conversation, please do comment below and we'll answer as many as possible at the end during our live Q&A. Chris, thank you so much for coming. Introduction's done. Welcome.
Thanks. Hi, Harry. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm pretty excited, to be honest.
Good. Well, we are too. I've got to say, I'm very excited to get into the Global Teacher story. It's an amazing proposition. So, just before we do, let's start with some of the basics. Let's do a little bit of an intro. Tell us a bit about yourself and your career today, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, well, I suppose my career, albeit fairly short, I'm 28. It started out as a design engineer, let's say, at university. That was my degree. I studied in Manchester. I'm from Sunderland, but I moved down to Manchester, spent 3 years down there studying design engineering, and then I left and I got a job as a draftsman. So I worked as a draftsman in the construction industry. So I was an architectural draftsman for 2 years. And then the company I was working for went into administration, and everyone who worked at the company, I was telling them about this project, and they were like, start your project. So I thought, you know what, this is quite a unique position to be in, where you've got this kind of open door or a window of opportunity, if you like. So I just jumped at it and finished on the Friday, and then on the Monday I started Global Teacher.
Wow, from draftsman to founder and chief exec, I'm not sure we've had that specific like Friday to Monday switch before, but really cool story. And let's get into a bit about Global Teacher. So, you know, it's a few years into the journey now for you. What do you want to just give the viewers, listeners, a little bit of an overview of what Global Teacher is, what you guys do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So essentially, what we do. I mean, what we do now is we design and manufacture an offline, off-grid learning kit. So the idea is, in remote rural communities around the world, there's often a poor standard of education because of many barriers. Some of the big ones are, well, there's loads: distance from home to school, lack of resources, insufficient government funding. But the ones that we kind of overcome is there's often no internet, and there's often limited electricity, and then therefore no digital content. So they might have a resource book between 10, 12 children, which is not a feasible way to learn. So what we do is we kind of provide an offline learning kit to bypass all of those barriers and then provide the best quality digital education essentially anywhere in the world, without needing internet and without needing electricity.
And I'm tempted to kind of clap at this point because it's such a wicked mission that you're on. What I know you've got, I think what I'm looking at in the background is one of these specific kits. Is this the right moment to just have a quick talk about what that actually is? Like what are these kits? How do they work?
Sure. So I brought one here. So essentially, this is the carry case, the box, if you like. And if I was to open that up very quickly, inside is a small projector. So this is like a projector that's kind of super powered by a Raspberry Pi. So really, it's not just a regular projector that needs a laptop or some sort of display to project. It actually is all in here. So it's a computer / projector. On here is thousands of offline learning resources. So that from the world's leading content providers from around the world, we preload them onto our software called Lumi, and then it's made available, as I say, in remote parts of the world. So that's the small projector. We've got a remote on top, which is kind of magnetically snapped, which is pretty cool. This is the lens cover. This is like a sliding stand. We've got focus rail. So all your standard stuff. We've got the power in an SD card slot on the back. So that's all designed in-house by us in our workshop next door. So all of the yellow parts that you see are 3D printed. So this is the top of the battery.
Oh, wow.
This is kind of half of the projector case. And then inside the box is a bit of a bigger component, which is the battery.
Right.
So this is a lead acid battery. It'll run the kit for around about 6 hours when there's no sunlight, or it's after dark, or it's rainy, or something like that. So the idea is the solar panel, which is part of the kit, will run the projector live. So it'll actually run off the sun.
Wow.
And then with the surplus energy, it'll trickle charge this battery for kind of those, as I said, like when there's lack of sunlight, so you can still get 6 hours of teaching time. And inside we've also got like 10-meter heavy duty cables, obviously, and you get the SD card. So that's pretty much it. That's the off-grid learning kit.
Yeah, so cool, so cool. And how's it going? So you're 3 years into the story now, since finishing as the draftsman and beginning as the founder. And what's it been like? What have the last 3 years been like, and where are you at today?
It's been a huge roller coaster, as you know. That's the startup cliche, isn't it? But it's undoubtedly lived up to that.
Right.
I always knew that I wanted to start something of my own. I wanted to take one of my ideas and make them into reality, and it was always going to be purpose driven. It was also, I thought, you know, I'm going to spend however long on this planet. I might as well spend my time doing something that's going to help other people, because I feel like that was the right thing to do, or that would, you know, it's basically the right thing to do. So we set up as a social enterprise initially, then we later set up as a charity. We've since raised about 150K as like startup funding, really, that allowed us to get an office, to set up manufacturing workshop, to hire some staff, to basically scale the initiative, you know, but get equipment and just get ourselves off the ground. And that happened in November 21. So still for a couple of years before that, we were all voluntary work, just kind of, you know, paving away, knocking on doors, pitching the idea, and trying to get people interested, which was, you know, at times tiring. And at times I never ever thought we would break the 6-figure barrier. And that to me was just like such a crazy moment. And even still, you know, 150K is, you learn, it's a lot of money, but actually in the grand scheme of things, it actually isn't, which is a bit disheartening, because you realize once you raise that amount, the mountain just kind of moves and it gets bigger. So it's constantly that you have to get used to that analogy, I suppose, of like, there's just a bigger mountain to climb now. But you do over that, you develop resilience and you develop a love for it. Really, it teaches you a lot about yourself. It's a fantastic journey.
Yeah, and it's you mentioned before that you'd had this idea. Like, I love that kind of, as the construction business went under, it was the kind of people around you'd heard about the idea who said, "Come on, Chris, this is the moment. Do the business, do the thing." What had stopped you doing it before then? And how important was that sort of bit of serendipity of the business going under and everybody? Was it, you know, what had stopped you, and what made you do it then?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I've never actually thought about that, to be honest. So I think, you know what, I went on a business course in my first and previous role as a draftsman, and it was because I did the marketing as well, so I was like draftsman / marketing, and I went on a marketing course, and again, I was telling people about this idea that I had, because it would just come up in conversation. And there was this one lady, Laura, she said, "Why are you here for this business then? Why are you not here for your business?" And I was thinking, and she initially gave me the confidence. I mean, you know, my family's always given me the belief that I could do something, you know, believed in me more than I maybe believed in myself. So I've had that bit of like encouragement. And then this lady called Laura was maybe the catalyst to that. And she said, "You know, why are you representing your employer? Why don't you come on behalf of your own business?" Later, after they went under in administration and I started up. And I think the reason I hadn't started it before then is because I was fresh out of university. I really had no idea what what the working world was like, pretty much. I mean, I was working for the same company whilst I was at university in the holidays and stuff. So I was getting used to full-time work, and you know what, that 2 years taught me a lot about business, and it taught me a lot about, well, I mean, to see a business grow from 20 employees to 60, then to fail, you kind of get a real whistle-stop tour of growth and and failure. And I was close to the MD, and we had a good relationship, and we're still in contact now. And I learned a lot. It got me in the swing of an 8 till 5, and yeah, I just kind of continued that momentum of work and life on into startup life. Hi, Ari.
Hey.
Hey.
I think we're back. Thanks for that. Sorry about dropping off. I think that must have been me, but I lost you or the other way, or whatever happened, just as you were talking about kind of beginning that journey and the kind of roller coaster that you were mentioning you'd been on. I think it'd be good, if it's okay, to just move into this area of design engineering, because I've got I guess a personal fascination. We spend so much of our time talking about software and web products, and websites and e-commerce and whatever else, but actually there's something amazing when you can see that physical, tangible kind of hardware stuff that you've done. Obviously you studied design engineering. How difficult was it to add in all this other stuff that you had to learn about being a chief exec and how to set up a business and raising funds and selling and all of that? Was that a super steep learning curve? Did you have support going through that journey?
Yeah, it was, to be honest, ever since I was maybe a teenager, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and because of things like, it sounds daft and very kind of trivial, but things like Dragon's Den and The Apprentice, I would religiously watch them, and I would get frustrated at the television. Not necessarily Dragon's Den, because that's more inspiring, but you know, The Apprentice, I would be like, I can do better. I want to go on. I want to. So I applied for the junior apprentice and things, and you know, that was the start of that like appetite for entrepreneurship.
Right.
So then when I started Global Teacher, and I started to go to networking events and to pitch people, the idea came kind of natural, because that's what I felt like I should be doing. So I remember coming away from one of the first networking events, and I thought, finally, I feel at home here. I feel like I found my place, which was really nice. And then the local area of Sunderland, albeit, you know, a small city slash town, which I'm a local lad from Sunderland, and the city and the local authorities and the business advice organizations have been so helpful with funding, with mentorship, with guidance, and then also with kind of expanding my network and raising my profile, albeit in the local area. Just, you know, help at every point in the journey.
Wow.
You know, from like this through a competition, you guys giving me this platform, just that has been consistent throughout, and you know, it's invaluable, really.
Yeah, and I guess that's a kind of a real testament to the mission of the business. I suspect, I mean, even just watching the comments come in here, there's people saying, I'm a web developer, let me know if I can help, what an amazing mission, that kind of stuff. I guess it's a very inspiring thing that you're doing. So it's no surprise that people have wanted to help. What about, as a, you know, just for all of those aspiring chief execs and founders that are watching and listening, what part of being a founder and a chief exec do you enjoy the most? And I guess in the same breath, what of it do you wish you didn't have to do, or what of it isn't your kind of home turf?
The thing I enjoy the most is being able to create an organization and a personality of that organization that's like an extension of us and what we believe. And obviously what we're doing is impactful in a literal sense, but I think arguably, you know, some of the biggest impact we can make is by standing up to a big challenge in the world and going from a seed of an idea to actually making it reality, and being very honest and open about that journey. And I think people watching hopefully they're inspired to do the same in whatever area of life that may be. I think if we can act, it's as a catalyst. So we boiled it right down, and what we believe that Global Teacher is basically a spark that can ignite the next dream, a visionary problem solver, leader. And I think likewise with sharing the mission and vision and sharing the story, sharing the really hard parts and the highs, I think that's infectious, and hopefully it can go on to kind of inspire people to maybe leave their comfort zone or go for that thing that they really dream of. And that's kind of what it's all about in a product sense, and in just emanating what we believe in as well.
Yeah, and I guess there's sort of different areas of impact. So like you say, there's the people that consume the materials that you manage to get in front of them somehow, but also, just like you said, there's such a kind of inspiration for people listening to this and people reading the website and blogs and whatever else, that you don't know who else is going to be triggered to kind of to trust their instincts that you had, and do this kind of work. It's really awesome. I've got to ask you about Sunderland. You've mentioned Sunderland a few times. It's great to hear actually that that the kind of networks and support systems around you helped. From our point of view, and I mean this with all the kind of respect that I should give it, Sunderland's not the first place you think of when you think about startup hubs and technology businesses. So, clearly there's some benefits from what you've been talking about with the support. But is it a challenge setting up a business based in what you might call a kind of non-typical location? Has that been difficult as well?
I think so. I think initially, definitely. But I think in the last 4 years, we've kind of evolved or moved with the times. And I think the whole world and, well, society's mindset, collective mindset, I think has changed.
Yeah.
And now people are looking for social initiatives and, impact driven organizations. That wasn't even the case 4 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I think when you start something that comes from a good place with the right intentions, you tend to ride your luck in terms of timing, I feel. And I feel like we're grown with that societal change,
Right.
and also with the kind of evolution of Sunderland. Sunderland's having a lot of investment at the moment in terms of kind of city-based businesses and even kind of residential. So there's going to be a lot more bodies in the city. We've got a fantastic new business district. We're based in the creative district of Sunderland, and it's a little bit of an up and coming city, which is nice because we've waited a long time. But going to university in Manchester and spending a lot of time in Leeds and things, you get used to this kind of cosmopolitan city, and then as a Sunderland lad, you kind of dream of that, and you think, well, do I have to move away for that? A lot of my friends have moved to London. We actually launched the product in London as well as in the Northeast. But when we launched it in the Northeast, everyone said, you got to do your events in Sunderland. This is, it's the fabric of who you are.
Yeah.
Is the Northeast, and you should be proud of that. And I totally agree. But we also couldn't resist the opportunity to do a cool launch event in London. So
it's so difficult, isn't it? Because there's that kind of actually being the one of the flagship bits of innovation to come out of Sunderland must come with a load of benefits, and that kind of it's too simplified, but that kind of bigger fish in a smaller pond versus a fish in an ocean full of people grabbing everyone's attention all the time. There must be pros and cons to both, but I think there's something we hear a lot at Hayes about how post-pandemic location doesn't matter anymore, and you can work any company in the world from anywhere in the world and that kind of thing. But actually, I think that's true to some extent, but there's certainly there's actually something so important about a root and a home and an anchor. And I think, to your point around the business being almost part of and an extension of you and your life, I suspect that actually that's a kind of key part of it. So it's really good to hear. Tell me a little bit about sort of advice. I'd love to put you on the spot a bit about some advice. So for all the people out there who have the idea but haven't taken the leap, what advice would you give them as someone who did?
Okay, yeah. my advice would be, if it feels inspired and it feels like it's coming from a good place and it feels authentic and you're doing it for the right reasons, and that's something that you're going to refine along the journey anyway, that sense of like, or the ability to decipher between
Right.
good and bad decisions. And I would say for me, I knew that this was coming from a good place because the story behind this is I was suffering myself, and I decided in my final year to take the leap and try to get a first because I thought it was well out of my reach, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. And that all previous to that, sorry, I've been coasting along. And then when you finally commit to something and think, right, I'm going to achieve what I think I can achieve, albeit it's going to be very hard,
Yeah.
there's kind of a switch that went off in my brain. And I thought, you know what, it's down to me now. I can't rely on anyone else. So I kind of had a concrete kind of assurance inside us that what I was doing was for the right reasons. So that would be my first bit of advice. Then the second bit of advice would be to, and this is something that I'm just learning now, really 3 to 4 years in. But the most beautiful thing about the journey is what it's taught me about my own ability to decide and believing in my ability to make decisions. I know that sounds crazy, but you make that many decisions and some work and some don't, you really hone in why some do and some don't. And it's like an internal kind of, an internal sense for me at least. And it's such a valuable life skill to be able to choose and to be able to decipher between, let's say, things that are right for you and things that aren't. And this journey has been like at times a painful discovery of that. But for me, it's really proven beneficial because, for example, the benefit is I can say no and not think, oh, should I have said yes? Should I have said yes? Should I have said no? I just say no and be very, very comfortable in that.
Right.
And that's like a certain freedom.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You put yourself in a world where you have to make decisions all the time, and actually your decisions are often the kind of the final say on certain issues. So it's almost like a kind of turbocharged decision making training that you've gone through as the founder.
Yeah.
I can imagine it's thousands a day. It's really interesting what you're saying. Actually, we hear it from founders quite a lot where once you commit to the kind of mission and believe in what you're doing, the luck kind of starts to happen around you. It's this sort of amazing combination of those things. Look, there's a picture there for everyone of Global Teacher in action. Chris, we've got to hear just a few bits and bobs about that. To remind all our viewers, do post questions for Chris in the chat now. We'll come to them very shortly. Where is some of your technology today? What are some of the communities you've got this in front of that you're proud of? Have you ever had the chance to visit any of them as well? I'm super curious on that.
Yeah, so we've done a proof of concept in Tanzania initially, and then basically where we're at now is we've developed 10 units, which is just a very small batch of production, that we are going to do some product testing on, say like, pat testing and things like that. And then we have around about 5 or 6 locations lined up from South Sudan to Ukraine to Mexico, Syrian refugee camps in Lebanon. So yeah, it's super exciting. We also have a local partner in Newcastle called Coco, and they have schools in Kenya. So we really want to, at some point over the next 12 to 18 months, visit Kenya with Coco because we've planned the trip. We've got the itinerary to visit Maasai Academy and some other schools over there, and it just, for me, I just can't wait to immerse myself in their culture and really see whether this ultimately solves their problem, and it'll be something that they can use and use and use again. And if not, why? Come back, learn all we can, potentially change the design. So that whole pilot process is probably going to be about 6 months. Hopefully, after all of that, we'll have like a production ready unit that we can scale up manufacture and start to distribute it, internationally, and continue to visit these places for sure.
Yeah, so cool. And where, just because this feels like the right moment, where can people find out more information, get involved, support the cause? What's the right, where can people go?
So if you check us out on basically our website, which is globalteacher.co, just globalteacher.co, and we're also alongside that we're running a crowdfund on Crowdfunder. So if you basically went on crowdfunder.co.uk and search Global Teacher, you would find our project. So that's we're raising money. We're raising £30,000 on the public facing crowdfund to get units into international trials, and then in the background for the next 24 months of operation, we're doing a bigger raise of 405,000. So at the moment, having loads of conversations with philanthropists, high net worths, and corporates around sponsorship and donations and funding. And I think ultimately we've worked very hard to build the infrastructure, and we're now at a place where really, after our initial funding, we're ready to raise the next round, and that will really ignite the movement and really take Global Teacher to a new place, which is again uncharted waters, but that we're so ready for that.
Yeah, so exciting! What a wicked moment to catch you in as well. Just the story lifts off. I hope this will become a helpful accelerator for that. I've got a congratulations in order. So you won the Super Connect for Good competition that we're involved in at Hayes as well last year. So obviously massive congratulations and no surprises for being the winner. You know, that competition is all about connections. It's all about network. It's all about bringing kind of like-minded organizations together. How important has that side of it been for you? Have you met other businesses that have helped shape your thinking or kick the proposition on a little bit?
Oh, hugely. I mean, all the way along the journey, again, I've found that as my mindset maybe evolves, or as I learn different things, and as the organization grows, we meet new and relevant people along the way. I can see Mike has just put something in the chat. Mike's one of our recent kind of advisors on international shipping and product compliance, and this niche knowledge that otherwise you'd be lost without, because coming from university as a design engineer, you don't these things. And you have to kind of meet them head on and get really good advice. So fortunately, we've been able to locate that. And from one of our early content partners, Ed Place, their team even helped us with our second hire. From being a content partner to resonate so much with the team, they're actually giving you recruitment advice. So just you learn along the way which teams resonate and who really buys into the mission, and actually you meet some awesome people. It becomes like the biggest learning journey, the biggest self-development journey, and actually the best opportunity to meet like-minded people who are on the same wavelength and who actually believe in what you do. And it's like you meet kindred spirits, if you like, all the way along the way. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's that kind of that entrepreneur slice that I think is properly global, and there's something about people that have taken the leap you have that I do think seems to be relatively consistent across huge networks of people. That kind of, yeah, I did jump in, I did take the risk, I did actually do that thing is really, really interesting. Okay, cool. So look, last couple of questions before we open it up. So you've mentioned what's sort of next for Global Teacher. There's this sort of 6-month proof of concept product testing work before hitting scale while you raise. What about beyond that? What's the vision? Where are you trying to get this? Do you have a big scary 3, 5, 10 year type plan for it all?
Yeah, we do. I mean, if you see on the wall here, if you see the 1 million, so we 3D printed this sign, and the reason we've got the 1 million there is because we know that if we deploy enough off-grid learning kits into remote and rural communities around the world, that eventually we will give access to 1 million marginalized students, or people who actually need exposure to new ideas, or would benefit from exposure to new ideas and information. So that's like the mission, if you like, empower 1 million marginalized people who can be inspired by exposure and new ideas. That's I would say our 2030 goal. in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. We're all heading as a society, as a global society, to try and do these things together. So that's our 2030 goal, and beyond that, my big audacious goal is to be the Apple of social impact. So Apple have created really cool hardware and really cool software, and likewise we have created Pod. I can't work out where my hand is. So Pod here. So we've created hardware and we've got software, Lumi. So Pod and Lumi work in unison like an iPhone and iOS. So imagine if we have the ability to solve problems through technology, and we have the ability to rapid prototype and print in-house. Imagine scaling that up and being kind of, as I say, the Apple of social impact, but focusing on rural, remote communities and giving those people access. Because in all the research that I've done, the way to really, I think, or it's been said, to really improve the world is to lift people out of poverty, and the leading way to do that is through education, and that's a very sweeping statement, I think. But I know in all walks of life, as I said, exposure to new ideas changes thinking, expands horizons, gives people hope and inspiration, and I think at the very least that's what we want to do, to act as that enabler. And really, if we help, it's everyone trying to make an impact. I'd be happy if they helped one person, I think. And then, I suppose, to keep it reasonable and sensible, who knows where it'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, I think the bigger and meatier and more difficult the mission, the better, because it's truly wicked work you're doing. So we've had one big question in. Well, there's two. One, if it's okay, a quick answer on, which is just, this concept of design thinking is discussed a lot, and it's probably in the world of the kind of buzzword or buzz terms. Having said that, based on your background and what you now do for a living, is that something you talk about? Is that a method or a way of working that you think about? And how important do you think that's been?
I think design thinking as a methodology or a theory, if you like, and a practice is super powerful. I've been involved in design thinking workshops, and they are really, really helpful at sparking creativity and solving problems, undeniably. For me, I'm on a different journey of looking inward and kind of working on myself and looking inward and taking guidance from basically myself, trusting totally in me and following that. So I'm less about design thinking methodology, and I'm more about using my internal compass and following that passion, following that spark. And there's nothing I can trust more than that. So that's how I would compare it. And I think you're right. Design thinking is a bit of a buzzword, and we shouldn't get lost in that. We should always remember, it comes back to right and wrong for me, and what ignites you, what lifts you up. There's one of my early favorite quotes was, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Find what makes you come alive and do that, because what the world needs is people who've come alive." That was like one of my guiding principles. And even though the world needs this also makes me come alive. And I think the more we follow what makes us come alive, that's just going to lift us all up, really.
Yeah. And thank you. And then, look, I do normally finish on a bit of what, do you have any advice? But I feel like you've given so much brilliant advice for this audience already. And I think, just to play back a couple of the things that I think really resonated, that sense that everybody has this internal guiding thing somewhere in them. And actually, from your experience, it sounds like really listening to the direction that gives you is massive. And I think that's incredibly valuable advice. And I also love that comment you made about trying to kind of let the business be a part of you. And, that's what makes it special, and that's what makes it magic. And I think, again, fantastic, really, really brilliant advice. Chris, thank you for taking part. That's absolutely brilliant. I will remind everyone that if you can go to globalteacher.co, not .com or .co, you will find out more information, or go to Crowdfunder and search Global Teacher to support Chris and his business.